Senior diplomat Zaxthul adjusted his ceremonial robes as he surveyed the grand assembly hall of the Galactic Council Station. Another interspecies conference was about to begin, and as always, he observed the familiar dance of delegates finding their seats. The proud Andorians took positions near the central podium, their crystalline appendages glittering under the hall's lights. The methane-breathing Volux clustered to the left in their environmental suits, while the hive-mind Qulari spread themselves strategically throughout the middle sections. Then there were the humans. Zaxthul watched with growing curiosity as the human delegation entered the hall. Despite being offered prominent seating near the front, a gesture of respect for the newest members of the galactic community, they politely declined and moved toward the back of the room. This wasn't the first time he had noticed this behavior. In fact, it was becoming a predictable pattern that puzzled many senior diplomats. Most curious, he whispered to his assistant, a young Phloxy named Miri. 3 galactic standard years of observing them, and they always choose the rear positions. Perhaps they feel unworthy of front placement, Miri suggested, her translucent skin pulsing with colors that indicated confusion. No, Zaxthul replied. That doesn't match their confidence in negotiations. There's something else at work here. Across the hall, Lieutenant Commander Alan Mitchell of the Earth Fleet Diplomatic Corps was just settling into his chosen seat. At 42 years old, Alan had the calm demeanor of someone who had spent years navigating both military and diplomatic waters. His dark blue uniform bore the silver pins of his rank, and his eyes, observant and alert, scanned the room constantly. Another successful negotiation for the back row, said communications specialist Kate Sullivan as she took the seat beside him. At 35, Kate had earned a reputation for her exceptional ability to read alien body language and subtle communication cues. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and she carried her translator device like others might carry, a trusted weapon. Did you see the look on the Veldari ambassador's face when you declined the front seats? Kate asked, nodding discreetly toward an imposing figure standing near the podium. The Veldari ambassador was an 8-foot-tall reptilian being with armored skin that shimmered with iridescent patterns. The species was known throughout the galaxy as fearsome warriors with unparalleled physical strength. Yet something about the human delegation's seating choice seemed to make the massive creature uneasy. I noticed, Alan said quietly. That's the 3rd time this week I've seen that reaction when we choose our seats. The Veldari especially seemed bothered by it. Kate opened her data tablet. We're here to finalize humanity's acceptance into the Interstellar Defense Alliance. Maybe we should have taken the front seats just this once, for diplomatic reasons? Alan shook his head, his expression serious. Protocol suggests we accept their honors, but security takes precedence. From here we can see the entire room, all 3 main entrances, and that suspicious service door that wasn't on the station schematics they provided. Kate raised an eyebrow. You noticed that too? First thing, Alan confirmed. Old habits. The lights in the assembly hall dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the proceedings. The Supreme Counselor of the Galactic Federation, a tall ethereal being from the ancient Elcorian species, glided to the central podium. Their voice, translated through the advanced systems embedded throughout the hall, reached every delegate. Clearly, distinguished representatives of the galaxy's sentient species, we gather today to welcome humanity into the Interstellar Defense Alliance. Their inclusion marks a historic expansion of our cooperative security efforts. As the speech continued, Alan maintained his relaxed but alert posture. His eyes never stopped moving, taking in details that others might miss. The nervous twitch of a Centaurian diplomat's antenna, the subtle hand signals between Rigelian security officers, the way the Veldari ambassador kept glancing back at the human delegation. They're watching us watch them, Kate whispered, her training allowing her to speak without moving her lips significantly. They always do, Alan replied just as discreetly. The Veldari especially. Something about us makes them nervous. The ceremony proceeded with the traditional exchange of symbolic artifacts. Earth had sent a replica of the ancient United Nations flag, while the Alliance presented humanity with a crystalline orb containing the defense codes and protocols of their new allies. Just as the Supreme Counselor was about to formally announce Earth's admission, a piercing alarm shattered the solemnity of the occasion. Red warning lights began flashing throughout the hall, and the translator systems automatically switched to emergency protocols. Attention all beings. Station security has detected a potential structural integrity failure in Sector 7. Please proceed calmly to emergency gathering points. This is not a drill. Chaos erupted almost instantly. Various species reacted according to their nature. Some froze in confusion, others began shouting questions, and a few larger beings started pushing toward the main exits. In stark contrast, the human delegation's response was immediate and organized. Alan stood up calmly, his voice cutting through the growing panic as he called out to nearby delegates. Everyone stay calm. The nearest emergency gathering point is through the east corridor. Move in an orderly fashion. Kate had already moved to one of the side exits, checking the emergency route indicators and using her translator to relay instructions to a group of disoriented Proximan delegates. From his position near the podium, Zaxthul watched in fascination as the humans efficiently directed the evacuation. Despite being relatively few in number, they had positioned themselves perfectly to cover all exit routes. They moved with purpose, helping smaller species and calming the more panic-prone races. The Veldari ambassador stood frozen for a moment, watching the humans with an expression that Zaxthul could only interpret as dawning realization mixed with ancient fear. They knew, the Veldari warrior muttered in its native tongue, which Zaxthul's translator barely caught. They always positioned themselves to control the room. As delegates streamed toward the exits, Alan maintained his position at the back, ensuring no one was left behind. His eyes met the Veldari ambassadors across the now half-empty hall. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared understanding. The humans hadn't chosen the back seats out of humility or uncertainty. They had chosen them because from there, they could see everything. And apparently, that fact terrified even the galaxy's strongest warriors. 3 days after the emergency evacuation, diplomat Zaxthul sat in his private office aboard the Galactic Council Station. The alert had turned out to be a false alarm, a sensor malfunction in one of the older sections of the massive space structure. But the incident had revealed something far more interesting than a technical glitch. Zaxthul touched the smooth surface of his desk terminal, bringing up the security recordings from the assembly hall. He replayed the footage, focusing on the human delegation's response to the emergency. Their calm efficiency was remarkable, especially compared to the panic displayed by many other species. "Computer, connect me to junior analyst Nerivax," he said. A moment later, the image of a slender, blue-skinned being appeared on his screen. Nerivax was young by Zenth standards, barely 200 years old, but had shown exceptional talent. For behavioral analysis, senior diplomat, Nerivax greeted with appropriate deference. "How may I assist you?" "I have a special assignment for you," Zaxthul said. "I want a complete analysis of human positional behavior in social settings. Focus particularly on their preference for rear positioning in gatherings." Nerivax's large, multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of surprise in Zenth body language. "Is this related to the incident during the Alliance ceremony?" "It is. Their behavior has caught the attention of several council members, particularly the Veldari ambassador. Conduct your investigation discreetly. We don't want the humans to realize they're being studied." "I understand, senior diplomat. I'll begin immediately." Meanwhile, in the human diplomatic quarters, Lieutenant Commander Alan Mitchell was reviewing reports when communications specialist Kate Sullivan entered his office. "You're not going to believe this," Kate said, dropping into the chair across from his desk. "I was just at the cultural exchange event in the common area, and 3 different species asked me why humans prefer to sit at the back of rooms." Alan looked up from his reports. "That's oddly specific." "It gets weirder," Kate continued. "A Polarian diplomat asked if it was a religious practice. When I said no, they seemed genuinely relieved." Alan leaned back in his chair, considering this information. "We're being observed more closely than we thought. But why focus on something so trivial? so we like to sit with our backs to walls. It's just common sense. Alan shook his head. Not to them, apparently. Remember, many of these species evolved as herd creatures or in environments very different from Earth. What seems like basic survival instinct to us might read as something else entirely to them. Kate's eyes widened with sudden understanding. The Veldari, did you see how they watched us during the evacuation? They seemed almost afraid. I noticed, Alan said quietly. We should inform Captain Harris. In the meantime, try to deflect any further questions about our seating preferences. Keep it light. Make it seem cultural rather than tactical. Across the station, Nerivax had begun his investigation in earnest. He had gained access to Earth's publicly available historical and cultural archives, a treasure trove of information about humanity's development. Hour after hour, he sifted through military histories, behavioral studies, and cultural analyses. Patterns began to emerge, and what he discovered sent a chill through his body. Throughout human military history, controlling the high ground and maintaining clear sightlines had been consistent tactical advantages. Their warfare evolved around these principles, from ancient hill forts to modern strategic positioning. Even their recreational spaces on Earth often featured designs that allowed for maximum visual awareness of surroundings. More disturbing were the psychological studies. Humans experienced measurable stress responses when forced to position themselves with their backs exposed, or when they couldn't monitor entry and exit points. They had even given this tendency a name: the defender's instinct. Nerivax compiled his findings and sent a preliminary report to Zaxthul with an urgent communication request. This goes deeper than mere cultural habit, Nerivax explained when they connected. Their preference for rear seating is hardwired into their psychology. They're constantly scanning for threats, positioning themselves for maximum tactical advantage in every situation. Zaxthul's expression grew grave. Even in diplomatic settings? Especially then, their military protocols explicitly mention maintaining situational awareness in foreign environments. Senior diplomat, they're treating every gathering as a potential combat scenario. The next day, Kate attended a reception for cultural attachés from various worlds. She noticed immediately that the questions about human seating habits had increased. An Arcturus representative asked if humans felt uncomfortable in front rows because of their less impressive height. A Canopian diplomat wondered if it was related to human visual range. Kate deflected each question with practiced ease. We just like being able to see the whole room, she explained to one curious alien. And it's easier to reach the refreshments without disturbing others, she told another with a friendly smile. But halfway through the event, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Two security officers, one Veldari and one Rigelian, were speaking in low tones nearby, not realizing her translator could pick up their words. They always position themselves with every exit in view, the Veldari was saying. It's not random or cultural. They're constantly preparing for conflict. Could it be simple caution? The Rigelian asked. No species maintains constant combat. Readiness during peaceful gatherings unless they anticipate violence, the Veldari replied. My ancestors recognized this behavior in apex predators, the ones that watch from high places, studying their prey before attacking. Kate maintained, her pleasant expression while her mind raced. She needed to report this conversation to Alan immediately. The misunderstanding was worse than they had imagined. By the time she returned to the human diplomatic quarters, Alan was already in a meeting with Captain Olivia Harris, the senior human military representative on the station. Kate was quickly ushered in. They're not just curious about our habits, Kate explained after describing what she had overheard. They're afraid of us. They think we're positioning ourselves for some kind of attack. Captain Harris, a stern woman with 20 years of military experience, frowned deeply. This could jeopardize our entire diplomatic mission. It's a fundamental misunderstanding, Alan said. What we see as basic situational awareness, they're interpreting as predatory behavior. The question is, what do we do about it? Harris asked. We can't change instincts that are hardwired into us. Alan stared out the viewport at the stars. Beyond, Maybe we don't need to change. Maybe we just need to explain. Help them understand that what looks like aggression is actually defense. Will they believe that? Kate asked. They might not, Alan admitted. But we need to try, because right now the galaxy's strongest species are watching us with growing fear, and frightened people rarely make good allies. Outside in the corridor, Junior Analyst Nerivax was heading toward the Galactic Security Council with his complete report. What he had discovered about humanity's evolutionary history and psychological makeup would soon be presented to the highest authorities in the galaxy. The Galactic Security Council chamber was smaller than the main assembly hall but designed with the same circular grandeur. Unlike public spaces, this room featured a round table with equal seating for all 12 council members. Today, an emergency session had been called to discuss a single species, humans. Zax Thule stood before the assembled representatives, his formal robes shimmering under the soft light. Behind him, a large display showed footage of humans in various settings: diplomatic, gatherings, cultural exchanges, even casual meetings in the station's recreation areas. In every scene, the pattern was the same. Humans consistently positioned themselves with walls at their backs and clear views of all entrances and exits. Distinguished council members, Zax Thule began, Junior Analyst Nerivax has completed an extensive study of human behavioral patterns. His findings are concerning. The young Zenth stepped forward, his blue skin paling slightly under the attention of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. Honored representatives, Nerivax said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Humans evolved as pursuit predators on a death world. Their planet Earth contains environmental hazards that would be fatal to many of your species. Additionally, they evolved alongside numerous apex predators. He gestured toward the display, which now showed images of Earth's historical predators: lions, bears, wolves. These creatures shaped human evolution, creating a species constantly alert to threats. The Veldari representative, General Drax, leaned forward. His massive frame dominated his section of the table. Are you suggesting their behavior is defensive rather than aggressive? The evidence suggests both, Nerivax replied. Humans developed as both predator and prey. This dual nature created psychological patterns that persist even in their most advanced individuals. The display changed to show human military training procedures, soldiers learning to enter rooms cautiously, check corners, and maintain awareness of surroundings. What you are seeing is not unique to their warriors, Nerivax continued. These behaviors are ingrained in their entire species. Their preference for rear seating isn't diplomatic humility, it's strategic positioning. A murmur ran through the council members. The representative from Arcturus Prime, a species known for their logical approach, spoke next. If this behavior is instinctive rather than intentional, can we consider it threatening? Instincts can be more dangerous than conscious choices, General Drax rumbled. They cannot be negotiated with or changed through diplomatic means. Meanwhile, Alan Mitchell and Kate Sullivan were escorted to a small waiting room outside the council chamber. They had been summoned but not told why. Captain Harris paced the floor while Daniel Wright, the human security officer, stood quietly by the door, his back to the wall, eyes on the entrance. This isn't a normal diplomatic meeting, Harris said, checking her uniform for the third time. Something's happened. Alan nodded. The questions about our seating habits, the increased surveillance, they're worried about something specific. Kate leaned closer to them. Whatever it is, I think we're about to find out. The door slid open, and a Phloxy attendant gestured for them to enter the council chamber. Inside, the council members watched them with expressions ranging from curiosity to open suspicion. Alan noticed immediately that the usual protocol had been altered. Instead of being offered seats at the table, 4 chairs had been placed in the center of the room, exposed on all sides. Captain Harris hesitated almost imperceptibly before walking to the chairs. Alan followed, noting how uncomfortable it felt to sit with his back unprotected. Kate settled beside him, her posture artificially relaxed but her eyes moving constantly. Daniel took the last chair, his discomfort even more obvious as his training fought against the vulnerable position. Zaxthul addressed them directly. "Thank you for joining us, representatives of Earth. We have been discussing certain behavioral patterns observed among humans." The large display behind him showed footage of humans in the station, always positioned near walls, always watching exits. "We've been studying you," Zaxthul continued, "and we have questions about your species' tendency to maintain tactical positioning, even in peaceful settings." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. So this was what the questions had been leading to. He glanced at Harris, who gave him a slight nod to take the lead. "Council members," Alan said, rising to his feet, "I understand your concerns. What you're observing is indeed a deeply ingrained human behavior." General Drax interrupted, his voice a low growl. "Do you deny that you position yourselves for tactical advantage in every situation?" Alan met the Veldari's gaze steadily. "I don't deny it, but I think you misunderstand the reasons." The display changed to show historical footage from Earth, ancient humans huddled around fires in the dark, watching the shadows for predators, medieval towns with high walls and watchtowers, modern cities with security cameras and alert systems. Throughout, our evolution in history situational awareness meant survival, Alan explained. "It's not aggression. It's caution born from experience." Kate stood next to Alan. "May I add something?" she asked. At Zaxthul's nod, she continued. "What you may not understand is that humans who don't follow these instinctive protocols often experience anxiety, an evolutionary response to vulnerability. When we can't see who's entering a room or what's happening behind us, our bodies release stress hormones." She gestured to Daniel, whose discomfort was visible to everyone. "Our security officer is experiencing that stress right now, sitting in the center of this room, not because he fears any of you, but because millions of years of evolution are telling him he's in danger." The council chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. The Arcturus Prime representative spoke first. "If I understand correctly, these behaviors are not a preparation for aggression but a response to perceived vulnerability?" "Exactly," Alan confirmed. "We're not watching for prey, we're watching for threats." General Drax stood suddenly, his massive frame towering over the humans. "Words are easy, Commander Mitchell. If what you say is true, then your species should be willing to demonstrate trust." "What do you propose?" Captain Harris asked, speaking for the first time. "The Centennial Galactic Summit begins in 3 days," the Veldari said. "All member species will attend. I propose that the human delegation accepts front-row seating assignments with their backs to the main entrances." A ripple of surprise went through the council. What the Veldari was suggesting would place the humans in exactly the position their instincts told them to avoid. Alan felt his heart rate increase at the mere thought. He looked at his fellow humans and saw the same concern reflected in their eyes. Daniel Wright looked particularly troubled. "This is not merely a test of words," General Drax continued. "It is a test of intentions. If humans truly mean no harm, they should be willing to demonstrate vulnerability among allies." Captain Harris stepped forward. "We accept your challenge, General. The human delegation will sit where assigned during the summit." As they left the council chamber, Alan fell into step beside Harris. "That's going to be harder than they realize," he said quietly. Harris nodded grimly. "I know. But sometimes the best way to prove you're not a threat is to put down your shield." Kate glanced back at the chamber doors. "They're still afraid of us, even after our explanation." "Fear doesn't disappear with words," Alan replied. "We'll have to show them with actions." Behind them, Nerivax watched the humans depart, noting how they automatically repositioned themselves as they walked. Harris and Wright on the outside, Alan and Kate protected in the middle, all of them scanning their surroundings continuously. The behavior was so natural to them that they didn't even realize they were doing it, and that perhaps was what frightened the other species most of all. The Centennial Galactic Summit was the most prestigious event in the interstellar community. Held once every 100 years, It brought together representatives from all member species of the Galactic Council. This year's summit was especially significant as it marked the first time humans would attend as full members. Captain Olivia Harris stood before her team in the Earth delegation's preparation room. 6 humans had been selected to represent their species at the historic gathering. Besides Harris, Alan, and Kate, the team included Security Officer Daniel Wright, Medical Officer Linda Peters, and Science Envoy Gregory Chen. "I won't pretend. This will be easy," Harris said, her voice firm. "The seating arrangement places us in the front row directly in front of the main entrance doors. Our backs will be exposed throughout the entire 8-hour ceremony." Daniel Wright shifted uncomfortably. At 38, he had spent 15 years in Earth's Special Forces before joining the diplomatic security team. "Captain, I've tried preparing for this. I spent 3 hours yesterday sitting with my back to the door in the mess hall. I couldn't finish my meal." "I understand," Harris replied. "This goes against everything we've been trained to do. Everything our instincts tell us to do." Alan looked at each team member. "Remember why we're doing this. The Council believes our positioning habits indicate aggressive intent. This is our chance to prove otherwise." "I've prepared this for everyone," Linda said, holding up small adhesive patches. "They're mild anti-anxiety medications that absorb through the skin. They won't impair your judgment, but they might take the edge off." Kate shook her head. "Thank you, but I think we need to do this without chemical assistance. They'll be monitoring our stress levels. If they detect medication, they might consider it cheating." "Kate's right," Harris decided. "We do this naturally, or not at all." Meanwhile, in the Grand Summit Hall, final preparations were underway. The chamber was truly magnificent, a vast dome with walls of transparent aluminum offering breathtaking views of space. Thousands of seats descended in perfect circles toward a central stage. Unlike the usual council meetings, the Centennial Summit followed ancient protocols with formal assigned seating. Zaxthul supervised the placement of monitoring devices under the human delegation seats. These sensors would track heart rates, perspiration levels, and other biological indicators of stress. "Is this really necessary?" Nerivax asked quietly. "General Drax insisted," Zaxthul replied. "He believes humans are practicing deception about their true nature." The young analyst frowned. "And if they pass this test, if they endure the discomfort, then perhaps we learn something important about humans and ourselves." 2 hours later, delegates from across the galaxy filed into the summit hall. Each species moved to their assigned sections. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms. Others slithered along specially designed pathways, and many walked on various numbers of limbs. The diversity of life was on full display. The human delegation entered last. All eyes turned to watch as they were escorted to their front row seats. Captain Harris led her team with military precision, her face betraying no emotion. They took their places directly in front of the main entrance doors just as specified. From his position on the stage, General Drax watched the humans intently. As a Veldari war leader, he had studied countless opponents. He knew what to look for: the subtle signs of discomfort, the telltale behaviors of species under stress. He didn't have to wait long. Within 20 minutes, Security Officer Wright had turned around to glance at the doors for the 3rd time. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair tightly, knuckles white with tension. The medical sensors confirmed what was visible to the naked eye: elevated heart rates in all human delegates. Their stress hormones were rising steadily, all except one. Alan Mitchell's readings showed remarkably normal levels. While his teammates fidgeted and glanced backward, he sat calmly, focusing on the proceedings. General Drax leaned toward Zaxthul. "The commander shows unusual control. Perhaps he is the most dangerous of them all." The summit continued through its formal procedures. Ancient treaties were reaffirmed. New species were recognized. Historical achievements were celebrated. Throughout it all, the humans remained in their front row seats, fighting their instincts with varying degrees of success. Halfway through the proceedings, Alan requested permission to address the assembly. After a brief consultation among the council elders, he was allowed to approach the central podium. Alan stood before the gathered representatives of the galaxy, aware that this moment could shape humanity's future among the stars. Distinguished delegates, he began, his voice clear and steady. You've been watching us struggle today. You've seen our discomfort. You've measured our stress. You've noticed Security Officer Wright's inability to stop checking the doors behind us. A ripple of murmurs ran through the hall. No one had expected such direct acknowledgement. You're right. We're predisposed to maintain awareness of our surroundings. It's written into our biology after evolving on a world where dangers could come from any direction. But we're here, facing forward, because trust must begin somewhere. Alan gestured to his fellow humans, still seated in the front row. Look at my colleagues. They're uncomfortable, yet they remain, not because they're plotting or planning, but because they believe in what we're building together. A galaxy where understanding bridges the gaps between our different evolutionary paths. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered his words. Even General Drax seemed thoughtful rather than suspicious. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the hall. Emergency lights flashed red, and the automated system announced, "Critical structural failure detected in Sector 12. This is not a drill. All beings proceed to designated evacuation points immediately." Unlike the false alarm days earlier, the danger was real this time. A maintenance drone's visuals displayed on the main screen showed a large crack forming in one of the station's outer hull sections. Panic erupted instantly. Delegates rushed toward exits, some species climbing over seats in their haste to escape. The human delegation stood calmly in the chaos. Despite their compromised position, they reacted with practiced efficiency. "Daniel, take point on the north exit," Captain Harris ordered. "Linda, assist the Proximan delegates. They'll struggle in the increased gravity of the evacuation routes." Kate quickly activated her universal translator to maximum volume, broadcasting evacuation instructions in multiple languages. Gregory helped a group of elderly Andorian dignitaries who had become trapped in the surging crowd. Alan made his way to the central communication panel and patched into the station's emergency system. "This is Commander Mitchell. We need emergency teams to Sector 15 as well. The surge of evacuees will overload the primary corridors." From his position near a side exit, General Drax watched in surprise as the humans, despite their tactical disadvantage, organized an effective evacuation response. Even more shocking was their prioritization. They were helping others before securing their own safety. The Veldari warrior had expected many things from humans, but selflessness in crisis was not among them. 3 days after the emergency at the Centennial Summit, the Galactic Council convened a special session. The hull breach had been repaired, and no lives had been lost, thanks in large part to the quick and organized response during evacuation. The council chamber was filled to capacity. Many delegates who normally sent representatives to such meetings had come in person. Word had spread about the humans' actions during the crisis, and curiosity ran high throughout the station. Zaxthul took his place at the speaking platform, the ceremonial robes of his office flowing around him. Behind him stood junior analyst, Nerivax, clutching a data tablet with his latest findings. "Distinguished representatives," Zaxthul began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We gather today to discuss the events of the Centennial Summit and, more specifically, the human response to the emergency." He gestured to the large display screen where footage from the evacuation played. The images showed the human delegation organizing evacuation routes, assisting other species, and coordinating with station security, all while operating from their front row position. "As you can see," Zaxthul continued, "despite their tactical disadvantage, the humans were among the first to establish an organized response. Junior analyst Nerivax has prepared a detailed assessment." The young Zenth stepped forward visibly, more confident than during his previous appearance. "Honorable delegates, our monitoring systems tracked the humans throughout the emergency. Their initial stress readings were high due to their seating position, as expected. But when the crisis began, something remarkable happened. The display changed to show biometric data. Their stress indicators didn't spike further as we would expect during a life-threatening situation. Instead, they stabilized. Their heart rate slowed. Their decision-making centers became highly active. Nerivax looked up from his tablet. In simple terms, the humans became calmer during actual danger than they had been when merely sitting with their backs exposed. A murmur ran through the chamber as delegates discussed this finding among themselves. General Drax rose from his seat. The massive Veldari's voice rumbled through the room like distant thunder. "I wish to address the council on this matter." There was immediate silence. The Veldari rarely spoke in council sessions unless matters of security were at stake. For generations, my people have been considered the galaxy's premier warriors. We have stood as guardians of peace and order. The general paused, his reptilian features arranged in what passed for thoughtful expression among his kind. We were wrong about the humans. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Drax raised one massive hand for silence before continuing. I misinterpreted their positioning, habits. What I saw as predatory was actually defensive. During the emergency, I observed Commander Mitchell use what humans call peripheral vision to monitor the doors behind him even while facing forward. Their species has evolved remarkable awareness abilities. The general turned toward the human delegation, who sat in their usual position at the back of the chamber. But that is not what changed my mind. It was their priorities during crisis. They directed others to safety before securing their own escape routes. This is not the behavior of predators. Captain Harris stood. "May I respond, Council Chair?" At Zaxthul's nod, she continued. "General Drax is partly correct. Our positioning is defensive, but he misunderstands why we behaved as we did during the emergency." She walked forward, her steps measured and confident. Humans are social creatures. Our species survived not just through awareness, but through cooperation. We protect our communities because that's how we evolved to survive on Earth. Alan joined her at the front. "There's something else you should understand about us. Humans don't display their most defining qualities during peace and comfort. We reveal who we truly are during crisis and challenge." Alan looked directly at General Drax. "You feared us because we always watched the exits, but you missed what we were actually doing. We weren't looking for opportunities to attack. We were identifying ways to help if something went wrong." The council chamber fell silent as the delegates absorbed this perspective. Finally, the Veldari representative spoke again, his voice softer than before. "There is something I have not shared with this council." All eyes turned to the massive warrior. In our evolutionary history, only apex predators position themselves to watch all others. Your behavior triggered ancient warnings in many species, mine included. The general's admission sent a ripple of surprise through the chamber. For the feared Veldari to acknowledge their own instinctive fear was unprecedented. "But now I understand," Drax continued. "You don't watch because you're hunting. You watch because you've learned the cost of not being aware." Zaxthul stepped forward again. "This misunderstanding has revealed something important for all of us. Our different evolutionary paths create different instincts, different fears, different strengths. Perhaps instead of trying to change these differences, we should design our shared spaces to accommodate them." 1 week later, the Galactic Council unveiled its redesigned chamber. Instead of the traditional tiered seating that forced some delegates to sit with their backs exposed, the new design featured a true circle with no front or back. Each delegation could position themselves according to their own comfort, while maintaining equal status. Alan and Kate stood on an observation deck overlooking the vast expanse of stars beyond the station. Below them, various species moved through the common areas, going about their business. "Look at that," Kate said, pointing to a group of Rigelian diplomats in the lounge area. "They've rearranged their seating to face the entrances." Alan smiled. "And the Veldari security team has started positioning guards at the back of rooms, just like we do. Funny how our survival instincts almost derailed our diplomatic relations," Kate remarked. "And funnier how they ended up bringing us closer," Alan replied. "Did you hear the Arcturus Prime delegation has requested human security advisors? They want to learn what they call our environmental awareness techniques." As they turned to leave, they noticed General Drax approaching. The massive Veldari moved with surprising grace for his size. "Commander Mitchell, Specialist Sullivan." He greeted them formally. I wish to extend an invitation. The Veldari High Command is interested in learning more about human tactical awareness training. Alan raised an eyebrow in surprise. You want us to teach your warriors? Not to make them more dangerous, Drax clarified. To make them more aware. Your species has much to teach about balancing vigilance with compassion. As they walked together toward the meeting rooms, Alan noticed something remarkable. General Drax had positioned himself with his back to the wall, scanning the corridor as they moved. A perfect mirroring of human behavior. Kate noticed it too and smiled. Looks like sitting at the back isn't just for humans anymore. Maybe that's how it should be, Alan said. The galaxy's strongest species learning from each other, rather than fearing each other. Far below in the station's central monitoring, Room Zaxthul and Nerivax watched the interaction on their screens. Remarkable adaptation, Nerivax observed, both species modifying their behaviors to accommodate the other. That, young analyst, Zaxthul replied with satisfaction, is the true strength of the Galactic Council. Not that we are all the same, but that we can understand our differences and grow stronger because of them. As if to prove his point, AI, mixed group of diplomats entered the view, humans, Veldari, and 3 other species, all unconsciously arranged in a protective formation, watching each other's backs as they moved through the galaxy together.